Hello, my name is Edward Hughes. I'm the president of the Harvard Business School Club of San Diego, and welcome to our webinar today. Before I introduce the guest, I have a few slides I would like to share with you. Let's bring those back up. All right. As I say, welcome to everyone today, to our members, to our guests. We're delighted to have you here, and thank you again to our sponsors for helping these events take place. Our mission as a club is very simple. It's to continue to educate leaders who make a difference in the world and make San Diego a great place to live and work. We've recently sent out a full newsletter that covers a lot about what the club does, our mission, the programming types, and some of the great initiatives that have been going on over the last few years. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, please look at that. It's on our website, and you'll learn more about the activities of the club. Our core programming starts with CEO Forum, and obviously that's what we're going to be doing today, talking to a very interesting CEO here in San Diego. If you look at that schedule over the last year or so, we've had a great variety of CEOs from Stone Brewing to Callaway Golf to Cirrus Aircraft. We've had a couple of professors from HBS. We've had a former Navy SEAL. We've talked to a couple of community resource organizations, San Diego Water, Community Power. Recently, we had David Abley, CEO of TaylorMade Golf, and just last month, the Aaron Zaslansky, the CEO of Flat Freight, which is a super interesting story, a great entrepreneurial story here in San Diego. We also have a number of things coming up as a club. We are trying a couple of different things this year, a little innovative in terms of having some events that are maybe smaller in nature. So we're organizing some hikes, some happy hours, and those type of things. So the first one's coming up on January the 15th. We are about to start our next management development program, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but that's February the 5th, and that one is a focus on nonprofit organization. Our next CEO forum is going to be with Tom Penn, the founding partner and CEO of San Diego Football Club. I think, as an English guy, talking about soccer, that's super interesting. So I'm kind of really interested to hear what's going to be happening in the MLS and bringing that to San Diego, I believe, in 2025. So a year away from starting playing here, but obviously a lot of formation activity going on now. As I say, we do our management development programs, and the idea of that is to bring a little slice of HBS here to San Diego. And we do that in a for-profit and a not-for-profit. Part of our mission as a club is to make San Diego a better place to live and work, and we do that through what we call our social enterprise initiative. And that takes a couple of different activities. One is that, we basically have invested in local nonprofit CEOs over the years in management development programs. And we've also given a significant amount of cash away. So cumulatively, we're around $550,000 we've donated or invested in ongoing management education. As I say, this program where we send CEOs of nonprofit organizations back to Boston for a week-long program called Strategic Perspectives in Nonprofit Management is a phenomenal program. It's had a huge impact on a lot of organizations. This year, or it's in 2023, we're now obviously in 2024. John Van Cleef, Todd Tibbetts, and Drew Moser, great organizations they run. They'll all tell you they had a fantastic time, learned a lot, and hopefully it's having a big impact on that organization. The applications for that, for the 2024 program the deadline, I believe, is going to be March 31st. So if you are on the board of a local nonprofit and you believe the CEO, it has to be the CEO or the executive director, is potentially, a candidate for this, it's got to be over $1 million in revenue a year. But they've, if they're a candidate and you feel they could benefit from that, please look at our website. We'll be sending emails out. We're looking for applications, and as I say, the committee will then select after March 31st. The second thing we do on the social enterprise is the local nonprofit program. And this is designed for the level just below that CEO. So the direct reports, managers, directors, those type of things. And what we do, again, is bring a slice of HBS to San Diego. It's a 14-case program. It's on 7 evenings on Monday evenings, starting, I believe, February the 5th. Last year, we had a record number of attendees. I think we had about 45 people. We're trending very well for that. But again, if you are connected with local nonprofits, please send the link to them because it's a great program. I believe it's only $550. So it's a phenomenal program for local nonprofits, and people have got a lot out of this over the years. And the final thing we do is some social networking. As you see, we're going to be trying a little bit more innovative in some smaller events. We just had a phenomenal holiday party. Thank you to Amanda, who's on our board, for hosting that. That was terrific. But we've got a couple of things coming up. Today is going to be a webinar format, and the reason we do that is because sometimes people leave their microphones on, and we really want to have the opportunity to hear from the CEO and have this fireside chat going on. I'll be asking a bunch of questions. I will be entertaining questions as they go. So if you have a question, put it into the chat for me. I'll also, at the end of it, try and go through and get as many of those questions answered as well. So, please type them in as we go. So with that, let me introduce our guest today. So Mick Farrell has been the CEO of ResMed since 2013. He has been appointed chair of the board last year. He joined the company in 2000, so he's had 23 years experience in this company. So obviously he knows a tremendous about the company and about the medical device industry. He's on the board of a couple of other technology companies in the medical space. He's very active in nonprofit organizations, San Diego Foundation, Rady's Children's Hospital, Father Joe's Villages. He's a Australian, so you got a Brit and an Australian talking to Americans in San Diego. So please put up with our accents for at least the next 45 minutes or so. He graduated University of New South Wales. He got a master's in chemical engineering from MIT and an MBA from MIT. So Mick, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here, Ed. And I apologize that the name on my screen says Jessica Collier. That's my assistant, Jess. The link was sent to her. We had some tech issues getting on, but I'm here and live, but I'm Mick Farrell, not Jess Collier.
Well, great. Well, and I'm delighted you're on. I think many, many years ago, we had your father on, and that was terrific. But, you spent a lot of time in the medical device industry. So what I'd like to do to start with, because a lot of our guests today are going to be in, whether they may be in medical device or biotech, but a lot of them are going to be in real estate or finance or other types of activities. And so not everybody's too familiar with the medical device industry. But, maybe you can start with talk a bit about the medical device industry and some of the big trends that are going on in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to, Ed. The medical device industry is really broad industry. I serve on the board of AdvaMed, which is our sort of advocacy group. ResMed's around $26 billion market cap this morning on New York Stock Exchange. There are a number of much larger companies you've probably heard of. Medtronic, north of 100 billion, Stryker, north of 100 billion, Johnson & Johnson, Abbott. And as an industry, our goal is to save lives, to improve lives, and to improve quality of life. And you think of everything that we do from, Medtronic making pacemakers, Stryker, or the company I serve on the board of, their competitor, Zimmer Biomet, making hips, knees, titanium that gives people the gift of walking, the gift of your heart working if it's Medtronic, and at ResMed here, the gift of breath and the gift of sleep. Actually, my chief people officer says it's not a gift because we do charge for it. So, but we do improve the lives of people in everything we do, and it's an incredibly exciting industry. When I went to MIT for my engineering and MBA, it was a big pivot for me. I'd worked in steel, chemicals industries before, and as all you experienced in Boston, it's the most educated city in the US. I think it's the most educated city in the world. Broadened my horizons and allowed me to go off into healthcare. I first went off into biotech, which many of you listening here in San Diego may be, with a lot of the big biotechs have offices or start up here and then become part of big pharma. I was with a company called Genzyme, which is now part of Sanofi, and spent some time there. And what was fun for me in going from steel manufacturing to making Cerezyme, a drug that cures Gaucher's disease. And that one does actually, people who would die by the age of 12, 13, 14 can live to full maturity and live a good life. It really expanded my horizons that you could actually overlap altruism with the profit motive and make a drug that changed lives and still be in a for-profit enterprise. And I was looking to switch from Genzyme either to Boston Scientific or another role within that company. And I called my dad up, and it's funny, he did this maybe 15 years ago, a session here with HBS. By the way, I apologize for anything he said or did. He's very unfiltered. He was born in 1942. I'm 1972. And so if he offended anybody, and you remember that, it's okay. I've apologized to a lot of customers over the years. But I called him up.
Let's just say it was a memorable talk.
But, I called him up. So you'll appreciate those who heard him then. I called him up for some advice. I was a 30-year-old kid, and I'm like, should I take this job at Boston Scientific, big brand name in medtech, or should I take this job at Genzyme, this business development job in Genzyme? And he's like, oh, in biotech, it's 15-year product life cycles. You're 30, you'll have 2, maybe 3 shots on goal. Talking about football, 3 shots on goal before you retire. If you go to medtech, the life cycle's 12, 18 months, new products every 2 years, 5 years for big platforms. And so you'll have 10, 15, 20 shots on goal. And I did play soccer in high school, and I will be attending. I'm a big Liverpool supporter. I will be supporting the San Diego Football Club. I'm so excited to have MLS here. But knowing football and knowing, you've got to be a pretty good shot to get one of 3 shots in your career and make or break it on biotech. And so that's how I chose medtech. But the whole industry of medtech is pretty broad. Yeah, it goes from everything from pacemakers to implants to non-invasive devices like ours. The big revolution that's happened in our industry, the big trends that are happening is a bunch of them, but I'll start with digital health and what's happening there. And this links to ResMed. When I joined the company 20 years ago, we were known as a maker of masks. We weren't even known as a maker of the electromechanical devices that give the pneumatic stent, the breath into the upper airway. And we sort of transitioned to become a mask company to a device company. But the next evolution of the company was really to say, are we going to become like the semiconductor industry, like the PC industry, and just be this little hardware that gets lower and lower and lower on the value chain? Or are we going to do the Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma, a book right behind me here, or Clayton Christensen's below it, Innovator's Solution, or actually his other book over here just before he died, How Will You Measure Your Life, which applied his business strategy to life. When you're that grandpa, grandma, looking back at your life, did you make the right choices and not become Ken Skillings, but become the Clayton path? And he was in HBS with Ken Skillings in the 60s, and great book on that. But we applied that innovators solution approach to ResMed and said, we are not going to become compact PC. We are not going to become the semiconductor company that couldn't survive against TSMC and Intel. And we decided to bring digital into every single medical device that we sell. So huge mega trend in the industry, but ResMed was right there experimenting in 2002 with like two-way paging, kludgy, sneakernet with SD cards in the early 2000s. But today, every single medical device that ResMed sells is 100% cloud connectable, has a 3G, 4G, now 5G comms chip in it. I pay tax to my friend over there at Qualcomm and all the other providers. We liberate the data to the cloud, and then we extract value for those data for patients, for physicians, for providers, and it really completely changed the industry. We changed from a widget maker to a digital health solution company over these last 7 years since we launched our fully cloud connectable platform. But that field of digital health is the biggest trend in medtech now. And obviously with AI and generative AI, we just launched our first software as a service AI-driven product to the market called Compliance Coach to help doctors and respiratory therapists manage thousands and thousands of patients. And we launched a generative AI product in an omni-channel market back in Australia, where the government doesn't pay for therapy. Patients have to find their way through the healthcare system in that country. We launched a generative AI to sort of be a digital assistant, a healthcare digital assistant to better sleep and better breathing for people in that market. And we won't leave it in that one country. We'll look to take it to the other 140 countries we're in. So that's one big mega trend. The other one, Ed, and I'll let you get to your next question. I won't filibuster here. The other big mega trend in our industry that's impacting us is from big pharma. and these GLP-1 drugs that are coming to market. They've been in market for 10 years on first gen, but really just the last 2-3 years with Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, probably the brand names you know. The chemical compounds are called semaglutide and tirzepatide. They just keep tuning up the concentrations and changing the indication for use. It started off as diabetes to try and get HbA1c under 7. Then they tuned it up. They saw there was this great side effect of weight loss. And then they turn it up to say, well, let's create an obesity drug to try and be specifically focused on that indication for use. And those have taken off. And now they actually are tuning one up to try to go after an indication for use for sleep apnea, the field that we're in. And if you look at ResMed stock over the 10 years I've been CEO and do a 10-year stock chart on RMD, you're going to see this sort of ups and downs, but lots of zigzags. Some of those are recalls, some of those are these pivots to digital. And the most recent one in the last 12 months was a huge hit we took about 6 months ago. Literally went from 32 billion market cap to 22 billion market cap in 90 days. And it was, I mean, I took over at 6 billion. So it was all the way up to 35, you're at 32, and then boom. And I always say I'm a very centered person. Stock could go up $1 billion or down $1 billion, but you know I read from the Old Testament, New Testament every day, and I have eternal word that I feel you divide any problem by something infinite, it's nothing. So $1 billion divided by an infinite word of God is nothing, but 10 billion divided by infinite word of God. No, I'm kidding. It's
that gets your attention.
Yeah, well, particularly when it's 30% of your market cap, and so. What happened in the GLP trend, and I just finished JP Morgan presentation on Monday this week up there, big healthcare conference. And what we did was we said, actually, all these myths about GLP-1s impacting the medical device industry are wrong. But you don't prove people just by saying it, which I tried on 2 earnings calls since that reset. You do it through data. And so what we did was we took those 16 billion nights of medical data we have, the 25 million 100% cloud connectable devices and that ecosystem, and we overlapped it with data from IQVIA and Inovalon, these big data sets that are publicly available. And we looked at 529,000 patients who are on a GLP-1 and on our device, which is called CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, or APAP, some type of positive airway pressure device, mostly made by ResMed. And we tracked them for 24 months. And the myth was you're going to see less patients into the funnel. We actually showed this 10% higher probability that a patient on a GLP-1, whether it's for diabetes, weight loss, or if they change the IFU for sleep apnea, 10% higher probability they're going to start therapy. The second myth was they're going to quit after a year or two. And so we tracked longitudinally 12, 24 months of data. We showed 12 months, they're 3% more likely to not only be on our therapy, but to buy, if you think about us as like a razor blades industry, to buy the razor blades. So to buy the masks, accessories, filters, and tubers. So not only are they using the device, they're going online, paying the copay through their insurance company or directly buying it. 3% higher at 12 months. And then they're like, yeah, but it'll drop off as the weight loss drugs kick in. No, it was the other way. That myth was broken too. At 24 months, it was 5% higher. 500 basis points. And that's huge in terms of the lifetime value for us, because this is a treatment for life and not a cure. And so this has been a really interesting trend. We've been sort of riding a digital health wave for the last 10 years and really driven it, disrupted the industry. ResMed led, our competitor Philips had to follow in our space of respiratory medicine, and all of other med tech are following and having cloud connectivity and big data sets now. The GLP-1 mega trend, you know, the diabetes companies locally like Dexcom took that same huge hit. Kevin, my buddy over there, and Jake, his COO, they were at JPM with me. They presented similar data on their data sets to say, actually, people are using their CGMs, their continuous glucose monitors, more when they're doing these weight loss drugs, more when they're on diabetes treatments, because they want to track the results of it. And so we're all sort of answering that this isn't a huge threat, this GLP-1. It might reduce the total addressable market a little bit in 2050, but it's actually a huge opportunity in terms of growth of patients getting into the funnel. And our biggest challenge at ResMed is to get patients into the funnel. And I'll go on mute and ask your next question then.
Yeah, it sounds like it's complementary, the GLP-1 and what you're doing. If you're saying it's additive to you as opposed to what obviously the market thinks, which is, okay, it's a replacement, you'll say, no, it's an additive strategy. Yeah. So. Yeah,
and it was just me saying that, Ed, you're right, for the last 6 months. And now with those data, we sort of went from that, 32 down to 22. We're back up to 26. We're actually 20, 30% off the bottom there. And it was funny, when you're in those you talk about being a public company CEO, and it's not the 10 and a half, 11 years here. It's the 42 quarters that have taken a centimeter of hair from this Aussie head every frickin' quarter. But when we were at that bottom, I took a plane and went to Boston, to Baltimore. I went to Edinburgh, went to Tokyo. I went to all the places where there's long money that's looking out 5 and 10 years. Those big funds, Bailey Gifford, Fidelity, these funds that are looking out 10 years and have less than 10% turnover. And they're saying, this is the dip. We're always looking for the right price point. ResMed's P/E was always too high at 30, 35, 40. They're down to 20. They're priced to grow like Medtronic and Abbott, 2 to 4%. We know ResMed's mid to high single digit grower, and on the bottom line going to be double digits. We're going to get in. So those people are already 30% up in just 90 days. My challenge is actually to get back to where we were in July and then get beyond it and get beyond this storm. But Ed, 2 huge trends: digital health, AI, and GLPs, big pharma coming in with this miracle drug. I think it's a really exciting time in medtech.
Cool. Let me step back a little bit, because we just went through the pandemic, right? And the pandemic, I'm in especially chemicals business, and a bunch of our guests are in other businesses. Med device seemed like it did pretty good, and obviously the pandemic was around respiratory issues driven, etc. How did that work out for you guys? And I'm sure there was a whole bunch of things, supply chain challenges, trying to keep up, and all those things. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I'll check the clock, because I could do a whole webinar just on the ventilator crisis and supply chain crisis. So we're 21 minutes in. And by the way, I'll be watching you. Call me out if I'm going too far on this. But lots happened these last 3 years. These last 12 quarters were the most turbulent of the 42. No question. I mean, for everybody, right? So we were there right at the start of this. It was really interesting. So we sell ventilators. We sell life support ventilators and non-invasive ventilators, like 5 to 7%, single digit percentage of our business, but we're in there. So what I saw in December 2019 and January 2020, before anyone in the world was talking about this, I saw the ventilator sales in Hubei province that I never heard of, in a city called Wuhan, go at 10x where they were. And everyone said, oh, what's the origin of this? I know where the origin is. I track the frickin' sales of this, and I know where it started in China and how it went overall in China. And we modeled this. I called my head of China up in January on a monthly call, and I was like, what the heck? I mean, the Shanghai Suzhou factory's maxing out. We're gonna have to send stuff over from Singapore. What's going on? And he said, we've had an outbreak. There's a respiratory outbreak in Wuhan, Hubei, and it's going to spread. And we'd been through SARS-CoV-1 in 2003. ResMed was there and did 10x productions for ventilators, just for Southeast Asia mostly, in that. And so we readied up our factories for a huge explosion across Southeast Asia of a respiratory virus like SARS-CoV-1. SARS-CoV-2, which was this one, renamed COVID, we did not. As soon as we saw that hit Italy in late Feb, early March, we went, oh shit. And that's where we then had to quintuple production of our life support vents. Obviously, all of us shut down business. The tech we were going through here at the start, Ed, to get Zoom going again as our company switched to Teams on Jan 1. Like, everyone went through that. Everyone went home. Many of your companies just shut down. I had a friend I was in YPO, and a friend running a huge restaurant group. She had to fire 5,000 people in 3 months. Like, it's just, half the workforce. It was a tragic time for everybody. But luckily for us, we could do something. So we had the factories running with everyone with masks before there was anything. We ramped up production. We made 150,000 vents from Jan 1 to June 30. But then when that crisis was gone, gone because the ventilators were through, and we were then managing it differently through drug therapy and others, which were much better than waiting till you're really sick and putting you on a ventilator. That was always the last resort, and we knew that it would be a temporary surge. We then had to pivot back, but because we'd invested 10 years in digital health, respiratory hygiene, we were able to do telemedicine models for sleep apnea screening, diagnosis, and treatment. So we were able to pivot from in-hospital diagnosis and in-lab diagnosis to at-home diagnosis. We've been investing for 10 years, and it was almost like, from every suffering comes some blessings. The suffering of COVID allowed us to have the blessing of saying, all right, doc, you can't run that. Let's do what we always knew was pretty good medicine, which is this telehealth and this remote sensing and treating of patients. And it really ramped up our ResMed. And yeah, if you look at our stock through 2020, we took that little hit at the start, and then we took off with the vents and what we'd done and all our investments there. And it was hard, actually, to be being successful while all my colleagues and others were still in a state of misery. And so that's why when we take a big hit at medtech and the AI and the GLP-1s, I don't expect sympathy from anyone around there, right? They're just cycles in different industries. But yeah, I got to tell you, those were two crises: the ventilator crisis, the supply chain crisis, where I had to literally on the Zoom call with the chief revenue officer at Intel, I was literally begging for semiconductor chips, and her mother was on a ResMed device keeping her alive, and she couldn't change the allocation from Apple and Tesla and all. Just, there's 10,000 chips in a Tesla, there's 3 in a ventilator, there's 2 in my CPAP and APAP, but I couldn't get them. We're less than one. All of medtech's less than 1% of the demand for semiconductors. So we had to pivot and re-engineer our products to have the sneaker net again, the SD cards, and then pivot back when the supply came back. But huge tidal waves on the industry, and that would have been enough. But in our particular industry, in respiratory medical, we had another issue where our number one competitor, Ed, had the biggest recall in the history of the industry. 5.5 million CPAPs were recalled by our competitor, Philips. And this was April to July 2021. And we are still here 2.5 years later, and they haven't settled with the FDA or the DOJ to come back to the US market. They're back in other markets. So in amongst a ventilator turnaround, a supply chain crisis, we have, we were number one, but we had our number 2 player, like 30-40% share, disappear overnight. We had to ramp up all those plants again in our core business. And we're still sort of going through the perturbations of what that looks like as an industry. I'm Irish Australian. I don't have any German blood in me, but the word Schadenfreude, only the Germans could come up with that. Happiness in someone else's misery. I have no Schadenfreude for Philips being out, because patients were left behind. We had to ramp up and make sure every patient was taken care of. But I can tell you now, we opened the biggest plant in the world for respiratory medicine in Tuas, a region of Singapore. So we import all the parts and pieces from Southeast Asia, manufacture in Singapore. I call it capitalist China. And what I love about Singapore is we partner with the Economic Development Board there. The EDB of Singapore is a partner. They co-invest, they help us find the staff and folks from manufacturing from Malaysia across the bridge. They bring in engineers from Singapore University, and we bring all the tech, and it's just been an amazing ability. But with that partnership, we're betting on a 2050 operating plan there, and cut the ribbon with the head minister of trade last year. That factory is capable of taking care of all of the world's demand. So we don't have to worry about our number 2 competitor. They're still not back in the US market. And I don't even care if they come back. Other people have taken tier 2 and tier 3 positions. We can now take care of the whole world's need to sleep better, to breathe better, and to live better lives. There are about 1 billion people worldwide who suffocate with sleep apnea. And, right at the moment, we've got 25 million patients on these cloud-connected therapies. It's a marathon, and we're in kilometer 1 or mile 1, depending on which side of the Pacific or Atlantic you're on.
Wow. Well, what a couple of years. So what market share do you have now in the US?
We're public, and I'll be releasing numbers in a couple of weeks. What I can say, Ed, though, I can say this: there are sell-side models out there that all just published because of JP Morgan. So the sell-side models from our analysts at JP Morgan has ResMed around 80% device share in the sleep apnea market, and on the mask side, they have us around somewhere between 70 and 75% share. So that's one sell-side analyst. Most analysts are plus or minus 300-400 basis points from that, sort of 3 to 4% above or below that.
That's a pretty healthy position to be in. So talking of the JP Morgan conference, I mean, you read in the Wall Street Journal, a bunch of CEOs are gloomy, right? They're saying, people are more optimistic about things than the CEOs, and CEOs are gloomy. So what was the mood like at the JP Morgan conference?
It's interesting because San Francisco, right? It was sunny when you landed on Sunday, poured rain on Monday, then it was sunny in the afternoon, and San Francisco was sort of the gloomy. Then the sun comes through the cloud city, and I think having all of healthcare, so it wasn't just med tech, it was all big pharma, so Pfizer, Glaxo, all the big pharma and big med tech, and all of us there presenting. It's a huge hub in that tiny Western St. Francis. By the way, I've got a cough. That place is a respiratory virus, a petri dish for freaking CEOs. So maybe they were just depressed because they were all getting each other's viruses that we haven't had for 3 years being on lockdown. When I read the mood of the room, I think in healthcare, we're actually pretty excited. We've learned so much through the COVID crisis about the importance of treating people outside the hospital, in the home, and with technologies that we are bringing to market. And so I think the sort of, as we look out 3-5 years, there's incredible advancements in the field of healthcare, both from the pharmaceutical side, there's GLP-1s, but a lot of other drugs, cancer drugs. There's some really exciting movement in solid cell tumor cancer drugs, some biologics that are coming to market. And in the med device space, I'm on the board of Zimmer Biomet. The idea of a cloud-connected CPAP was thought of as insane when we launched it in 2014. Now everyone says, well, it was obvious 10 years later, everyone should do it. How about cloud-connected knees and hips replacements, right? The My Mobility app that you can get now with it. You get a replacement hip and you don't have to say to your doctor, I'm doing the exercise. It's tracking your gait, your steps, and the data in the cloud, and not just like Whoop and Fitbit, like feeling good and consumer wellness, but real medicine happening at scale. And so I think the mid to long term is incredibly bright, the mood amongst the CEOs there at the dinners and the thing. I think what can happen is when you got a journalist and they're really looking for, they're not, when they think long term, they think like 6-12 months. This is an election year. And you've got 2 80-plus-year-olds going for office, likely candidates from each party. It doesn't look great. No, I mean, I'm not going to get political on this, but is the best out of all 200, 300 million Americans, is the best these two people? Like, I think there's some elements of, there's going to be some weird externalities that are going to impact our industry, right? And you can't control a COVID crisis or a supply chain crisis or a competitor recall, so you just deal with them. But you sort of feel like you'd like to have some sort of stability on economics and politics, and just allow the weirdness to be in biology versus us being there. But I could only read some of that uncertainty around the geopolitical stuff. Will China invade Taiwan? Will this land war in Europe for the first time in 70 years spread from Ukraine to broader? Will this Middle East, Palestine, Israel, go to Hezbollah in the north? Will it go broader Middle East? And so I think all those geopolitical ones impact all of us, and the CEOs aren't immune to that. I will say this, these last 43 quarters, it's the loneliest job I've ever had. You really don't have anyone to turn to. Your board of directors are the people who hire you and can fire you. They're colleagues. They're stewards of strategy and culture and risk and reward. But they're not your best mates. They're advisors and bosses. And then your team, you love them. They're awesome, but you might have to fire them, and you do. And you have to allocate capital, and they all want it, and SG&A and R&D. And so I think, when you ask CEOs, how do you feel? I think there's just an element of, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. And then when the geopolitics and the externalities are high, that may be the sentiment. But I think in healthcare, there's I'll call it a 51% optimism. We're going to get through these storms of an election year and the geopolitics. And we're going to take care of, in our case, 2 billion people worldwide who need our help to sleep better, to breathe better, and to live a better life in outside hospital care. Because that's what ResMed does. ResMed stands for respiratory medicine, so sleep apnea, lung disease. But it also stands for residential medicine. We run software as a service for home medical equipment, home nursing, home care. And 90% of our revenues and profits are from services and products and solutions delivered in the home, and definitely outside the hospital. We think that's the future of healthcare. And as we move from expensive sick care in hospitals to lower cost, lower acuity, higher quality environments like your home or an outpatient, we're going to save money for the healthcare system. It's almost 20% of the US GDP is spent on healthcare. Half of that is sick care. It's wasted inefficiency. ResMed wants to be part of the solution to bring us down to, France is about 12%. It's not a perfect system, socialized medicine, and a lot of constraints, but we can do it in a public-private system in the US. We can do it more efficiently. And that's where that's why I'm 51% optimistic, Ed.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're optimistic on that. So you talked a bit about the US versus other markets. I don't know what your revenue split is between the US and others, but how's the pricing in the other markets? I always hear about, huge pricing in the US, etc. But, you got to be more competitive overseas and different reimbursement policies. Give me a little flavor for that.
Yeah, it is interesting. So in pharmaceuticals, like take the GLP-1s, that company, one of the companies there, Novo Nordisk, their GDP of the home country, Denmark, is about $400 billion a year. The market cap of Novo Nordisk is over $400 billion a year. So imagine that. So you've got this drug company, and they charge around $1,200 per month for these GLP-1 drugs to US citizens, taxpayers, like even despite our accents, like you and me, and everybody on this call. But they charge 200 euros per month in Denmark for the same drug. And so it's an interesting one, right? Where it's all like the US subsidizes the R&D for big pharma and big biotech for the whole world, and then the other countries get much better pricing, and that's true across all of pharma and most of medtech actually too. ResMed's different in that because we're in the out of hospital care setting, we don't have that infrastructure. The highest volume market for us is the US, so the US is actually our lowest price environment, which actually makes sense since it's our highest volume and economies of scale on the standard cost curve that we all studied back within our MBAs. And so we have higher prices in lower volume markets. That makes it difficult because if I have a higher price in a lower volume market, but it's India where the GDP per capita is half or a quarter, in some regions an eighth of what it is on average in the US, then we have to find other ways to go to market. And so what we do in India, for instance, is we have, obviously, we're not going to go and want to set up all the old school infrastructure of sleep labs and diagnostics. There's some of that, but we do a fully digital approach. We call it Project Akash, which in Hindi means Project Blue Sky. And we're able to digitally screen, diagnose, and treat a patient. And then when you get to therapy, instead of charging, like $1,200 for the device and $200 a mask a year, like you might do for a cash pay patient in the US or Australia, we do a subscription model. And every Indian citizen, they don't pay $800 for any phone like us crazy people do. They all go on subscription models. Yeah. And actually, Verizon and AT&T drive pretty much subscription models for even this, expensive iPhones and stuff here in the US. But we do subscription models for our medtech products in our India market. And we're actually doing that across Indonesia and other parts of Southeast Asia as well, Southeast Asia. And we brought that actually to do it in China because, if you work for the government, you're a rich, fed person in Beijing or Shanghai, whether government or private, you're probably getting a ResMed device from Singapore there. But we have locally made stuff that we can find ways to have subscription models that you can order through WeChat, do the screen diagnostic, all in one app. WeChat is an all-in-one app. It's actually what Elon Musk wants X to be. WeChat is. And we're able to do that in those types of areas. So, yeah, very different pricing in different markets. But our job, the way we look at it is if 1 billion people are suffocating with sleep apnea every night, our job is to find a way, despite the socioeconomics, despite the economics of the particular healthcare system or its inefficiencies, to find the best path for therapy for all billion of them. And they're going to be different models. And we're in 140 countries, but they're just 4 examples of what we're doing in the US, India, China, and Australia.
So you may have different models entirely in a neighboring country in Asia, for example. So yeah, that creates some complexity in managing that, right? I'm sure.
It does. I mean, look, how about in the non-United States of Europe, right? It's so we have a different model in Switzerland from France, and we have had customers. So we had initial customers, buying in France and driving the trucks over the Alps and then selling them in Switzerland. And obviously, you can't control product flow around Europe, but Switzerland's not part of Europe. And our goal is to say, well, let's find that right model, even if it's different country to country. Let's find a model so you don't create huge disparities and issues for someone to do that. And it is complex in 140 countries, but there's a lot of commonalities. It's either B2B or B2B2C or D2C. There's really 3 models of how we operate, and they're just in different proportions in each country. So although they're all very different, it's just different parts of the pie chart go to those 3 different models. And there's actually a lot more in common with the global healthcare system than there is different. But we leverage some of that difference, but our goal is actually to simplify, to really simplify the system for the person. The person who then becomes a patient and deals with a physician and a provider.
Okay, cool. So I know there's a couple of questions popping in. So how are products which claims apnea cure without the device affecting ResMed? So maybe that's talking a bit about the GL1 stuff.
Yeah, oh no, there's a lot of different therapies coming down the pipeline, and we're investing in them actually, by the way. So ResMed stands for respiratory medicine, as I said. It doesn't stand for CPAP company.
Yeah.
So the best alternative, so CPAP is one, and APAP is 100% effective at treating sleep apnea when it's used, but we can only get 90% of patients to be adherent, right? Best technology in the world, smallest, quietest, most comfortable, most digitally connected, the doctor using the tech system, the patient using myAir, we get to 87% adherence, which is awesome. And pharma companies dream of having it. But that's 13% of patients that we just can't get over there. So, and we see, millions of patients a year. So for that 13%, if they fail on CPAP, APAP, bi-level, we then actually refer them on to dental sleep medicine, which is basically think of it as a mandibular repositioning device. If the CPAP pulls your tongue off the uvula through air, this does it through just physically pulling the jaw forward, a mandibular repositioning device. So we are the number one provider of dental sleep medicine in Western and Northern Europe, a 3D printed dental device. And that's about, if the CPAP's 100% effective when used, the dental's about 70% effective when used. The next therapy in line would be these pharmaceuticals, which are about most of the clinical data, and there's data coming out in the next couple of months from Lilly on this. But most of the data on pharma show about a 50% reduction. So they sort of half treat the suffocation. It's better than nothing, right? It's not as good as the low cost, low acuity device or the dental, but 50% is better than nothing. So the third alternative is to take a pharmaceutical. We're an investor in a pharmaceutical called ApniMed. It's actually a startup out of Boston combining two therapeutics. It's a pill that aims to, through its biochemistry, stimulate the tongue so that it stays off the uvula. It's about half as it's about half effective, half treats. The GLP-1s, they haven't put their data out yet, but they have about a 15, 20% weight loss, up to 30%. So we think it's going to be about the same as that ApniMed, about 50% treatment of the apnea through that alternative. And the fourth alternative, if you won't wear the CPAP, you won't use the dental, and you won't take the pill, because some people just won't do that, the fourth alternative is an implant device. It's called hypoglossal nerve stimulation, where we put titanium in your chest and wires to your lungs to see when you're trying to breathe, and then a stimulator that goes up under the tongue, and a little electronic stimulator on the hypoglossal nerve here, and it'll just stimulate the tongue every time you breathe at night to pull it off, and it waits till you're asleep before it starts to stim. And that is a company called Inspire that's public that's doing that, and we're an investor in a competing technology called Nyxoah. And I think it's a good niche area, about 50,000 patients to date taken care of. It's 7 years in business with Inspire. We took care of 50,000 patients in CPAP in the last 3 business days. So while I was at JP Morgan, we took care of 50,000 patients. So it's very different scales for all those different types of therapies. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because it sounds, I mean, I know some people have a discomfort with the sleep app, equipment, the mask, whatever. So it sounds like there's alternatives if you can't handle, wearing the mask at night.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. You talked about AI and its impact, and I'm sure as a CEO of a public company, you can't do an earnings call now without mentioning AI, etc. But
Yep.
tell us, what AI is, how are you using it in your business?
Yes, I gave a couple of examples earlier, but I'll say this, with 22.5 million 100% cloud connectable devices in 140 countries sending data every day to the cloud, 16 billion nights of data, ResMed's not going to be the best at AI. That's going to be Microsoft, that's going to be Amazon, it's going to be Apple. But we have to be the best at applying AI in the field of sleep medicine and respiratory medicine, and sleeping health and breathing health. And what we've launched so far is just the start of that journey. But one product we launched called Compliance Coach is basically takes the job of the physician and respiratory therapist when they're managing thousands or tens of thousands of patients, and automates all the tasks that were just so insane for them. And you could think of that as, well, it's just machine learning if it's doing that. But the AI part is it does learn on itself, and it does create additional value every time it gets used. And so as the leader, you sort of have a pretty big advantage on this. That asset, ResMed's market cap today about 26 billion. We've only got $5 billion worth of physical assets. And if you add up all our 10,000 patents and you do the MPV on the value of those, probably another $5 billion worth. So that's $10 billion. What's that $16 billion? What is that other asset? It's our brand. It's the trust that patients have, physicians have. It's that moment of truth when they choose us. But it's also those digital assets, those 16 billion nights of data. It's very valuable. So our application of AI in that ecosystem, before I go any further, I'll say this: privacy, cybersecurity, and interoperability, like us having trust. Right. You know, our competitor lost trust on quality with the market, right? That's really, 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 really bad. It takes a long time to build back trust in quality. Trust in privacy, trust in cybersecurity are huge. You know, one of the medtech players recently, Henry Schein, had a cybersecurity incident. They're still going through it. Huge impact on them, to their customers, to the world, and so on. And so we're very productively paranoid. I'm the Jim Collins productive paranoia every day about privacy, cybersecurity, and interoperability. But assuming we keep all those going, right? It's de-identified data. We're doing the right things and really making sure patient privacy is always well involved. The artificial intelligence, the use of it correctly in that field, getting that private cloud sandbox that has the rules and that Microsoft doesn't learn from what we're doing and sell it off to our competitor, that it's truly ours, and same with the AWS product and Google product. And by the way, if you're in this, please be investing in a couple of them, because I want to make sure there's a good ecosystem. I don't want just one company to own it. Microsoft guy, got a Microsoft guy on my board, Desni Tan. I love them. I got a Google guy on my board, John over at Google Health. I love them, but I don't want just them to be there. I want a nice ecosystem of providers here. But as we're looking at it, that compliance coach is saving 50% of the labor costs for our customers and driving adherence rates to where it's never been before. I love the generative AI one, though, that's helping patients. That little test in Australia and New Zealand that we're doing, we call it Dawn. It's a generative AI product that helps people as they, my wife says I snore. I don't believe her. I've been told I stopped breathing on a camping trip. I don't believe it. And it walks you through the journey of sleep, not just, here's a CPAP, use it, because that's where it's the most effective. It's, okay, let's discern where you're at in that journey. Maybe you should start with a pharmaceutical. Maybe you should start with a dental. And then the goal then is for ResMed to be the digital healthcare concierge for sleep health and respiratory health for the patient. So that's how we're thinking about AI. But this is a 10-year journey. But I will say, I think this is as big an inflection point as was the launch of digital health 10 years ago for ResMed in 2014.
That's awesome. You mentioned 10,000 patents, and I read prior to this call that you just won a pretty major patent lawsuit, right? So there's some people out there always claiming to take stuff. So can you tell us a little bit what that was about and what the outcome was?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the bigger you get, the bigger the target is on your back. And my son was just going and applying. He's my last child to go through this process, but it's this legalized child abuse process you have here in the United States of applying to college. And he went through and he was looking at, University of Chicago. He wanted to do finance. Doesn't want to be an engineer like his dad or his granddad, or there was some great granddad who was in finance. But for anyone who's in finance, my son loves you and would love to come talk to you at HBS to understand what you did post that. But just found out he got early decision to University of Chicago. So I was super pleased because that's a good economic school. Milton Friedman, who I really like. But one of these top 10 was NYU. And I always told him, you can't apply there because they're fricking suing us. But I didn't. But look, the bigger you get, there's a professor there, David Rappaport, been in the industry 20 years. He wrote some patents on some stuff that we'd already pre-done stuff on, and we were so far ahead of. One of the players in the industry that came and went, Fisher & Paykel, used to make CPAPs, and then now they don't. But they licensed some of his technology, and then they didn't. But so they had a royalty stream that went up and down when they went out of business. They just didn't ride the COVID wave. They said, forget it, we'll just focus on the masks. I think NYU's like, well, we need licensing revenue. There's the big gorilla. We'll go after that one. And they came to us and were like, your patents are after hours. We got I was actually named on one of the patents that was earlier. Like, I've only been at the company 23 years. I'm like, David, no offense, like, it's behind us, and come on. But it's NYU, and so 2 years. What we did was we went to the patent trade office and said, look, prior art, ours was ahead. Here's the date, here's the time, here's the thing. And that 10,000 patents were very useful to say theirs were late, copying and or not novel, and so they just dismissed all the claims that we challenged on all the patents. Every single claim that they thought could apply to us was wrong because we were already there. I think the 34-year history, and look, I don't want to beat up on a non-profit, but if you come and fight with us, we have to push you back.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're not really non-profit; they pay the professors and everyone pretty well. And those licensing areas, like MIT had a huge licensing thing. If it truly is original IP, the university should be able to license it and get revenue from it. But they should do that first and have the companies create around it and create that infrastructure, not come after someone who was before them. But so that's sort of the defensive play on IP. What I like is the offensive play. Not as in to be offensive like maybe my dad was to 51% of the audience when he was here 10 years ago, but on the offense. And I think the work we've done in smaller, quieter, more comfortable devices, more connected devices, and more intelligent devices has been pretty interesting. And so when a tech company wants to come into this space, when Google was looking at a partner here, we formed a joint venture with Verily in the field of digital sleep medicine. And we learned a lot these last couple of years. And we actually have bought and kept all the assets and IP from that joint venture with Google's Verily arm. And now that's part of ResMed's arsenal. And it's really about when a player comes in. So the new Apple Watch is going to have, if my colleague over there at Massimo in MedTech, if he stops suing them, you'll be allowed to get it. I keep telling him, I'm like, why are you taking on $1 trillion company? His market cap's smaller than mine. I think he's like 8 billion market cap. He's fighting this $1 trillion company, but he won a suit against them because they were stealing some of his IP, he thought, and he got at least one judge to agree on oximetry testing in that iPhone and that Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is also doing sleep monitoring. I'm not suing them. I'm saying, Tim Cook, come in, the water's warm. I want every tech company to have a sleep monitor on that Apple Watch. Samsung are launching a sleep app on their next iOS equivalent upgrade that every single Samsung phone is going to come with a sonar on your phone that can help you understand how you sleep. And Google's Fitbit division is launching sleep monitoring across Fitbit, and Whoop already does it. I want to be there as ResMed, capturing that big tech, consumer tech trend that they want to come in. When they look at the field to say, well, who should we pass a risky sleeper or a risky breather? Because they don't want to say I've diagnosed sleep apnea, because then there'll be a medical device. They have to go to the FDA. What they want to say is it's consumer health. I've identified a potential problem in this one lead EKG or this early stage sleep monitor. When they go look at the patent universe and the market, they'll say, well, we should partner with ResMed. And it's what Google did before. And our job will be to go there actively to Apple Health, Google Health, Microsoft Health, and say, let us help you concierge that patient that person you've identified might have an issue. We can help them get to a home sleep diagnostic to find if they're there or not and find a path to therapy. And so that's sort of, I don't know, the IP can be defensive, like, hey, big university, don't sue us. But it can actually also be, hopefully, really an exciting asset that others say, I want to partner with you.
And we actually got a question exactly on that topic. Someone said, my Apple Watch tells me how well I sleep at night. The CPAP also collects data. Is there some way to combine this data to get me a better night's sleep?
Well, whoever asked that question, I'm sorry, I can't see the chat on. I wonder if you were on our strategy call earlier with my top 100 leaders, because we were just sitting there looking at this plethora. We got some of our team. My chief medical officer is the head of the Consumer Technology Association's medical group. So he's over there at Vegas right now at CES. And CES, like there's wearable tech for everything. I mean, it is amazing, the wearables and the I don't know, the quantified self movement, digitizing self movement is incredible. So I love that Apple Watch already has that in market. Yeah, you've got to be. I mean, the Maya data, we've got 7 million patients who have the Maya app from ResMed. I want all of them. Actually, Scott Hennekens is part of your group here. I was up at the AdvaMed conference with him. He's like, why can't I get my Maya score on my watch? And the team are on that. We've got to be able to have interoperability between ResMed's Air Solutions ecosystem and Apple Health. One of the challenges will be cybersecurity, privacy, and interoperability, because it's your data. You own your data. And if it's medical data, I mean, I'm legally and ethically obligated to know the privacy. I can only give it to where you want it to go. And I've got to be careful that I trust whoever I share those data with. So Apple, big company, incredible cybersecurity. We would trust. Apple Health has that. But we probably won't engage with all of the consumer health wearables. And so we'll have to really think, where do we want our APIs to go to and where do we not want them to go to? In our, we've got to think with a consumer mindset, like the Apple Watch and the wearable Fitbit and the Whoop. Where we've already done the APIs is to, names probably not familiar with all of you, but Epic, Cerner, Allscripts. These are the digital electronic health records for hospitals. We have 170 calls per second in and out of our Air Solutions system to Cerner, Epic, and Allscripts, because doctors want to see the data on you. When you walk into their clinic, they want to have had it already uploaded. And so we've got incredible APIs there on the healthcare side with hospitals. We've got to get as sophisticated and learn who we can trust, the way we trust them on healthcare, who we can trust, whether it's Apple or Google Health or some of the other players that are coming up, and how and where we share those data, and that the person chooses and clicks, yes, I want that to happen.
And this talks to another question we got in. How do you see the personalization of healthcare being impacted by digital tech and economic trends? I mean, it sounds like obviously the data's there. Now you need to be who's interpreting it and giving you the recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. Data alone is useless. Everyone was talking about big data 5-10 years ago. We want actionable information, and I only want to give you, as a person, something from ResMed if, when you see that brand, it's like, okay, they've helped me. I'm better off after the information. I want to scare you with something you don't know about. I don't want to give you information that you don't need, and I certainly don't want to give you bad information. So discerning what information to give, how to turn big data into actionable information, and how to help the person on that personal health journey, and how you want it. Because I don't think the world's worked out whether they're going to put, are you going to trust all your data like you do with all your songs and all your photos to Apple? Are you going to trust it to United Healthcare when they've already got all the data, but you really want them to be the one to manage that personal health journey? So is it going to be a consumer company? Is it going to be a health insurance company? You're going to trust the government? I mean, I think maybe pre-COVID people said, yeah, sure, I'd trust the government with my thing. I think what we saw is they don't always manage health that well. That was pretty like mask on, no mask, vent, no vent, this drug, that drug. I think what we've got to do is empower each person with their data in the right way. And we are working on that sort of personal health journey within the field of sleep health and respiratory health. And then we need to work out where you, not just you, the 50 people or so on this call, you, the 8 billion people, are going to have the trusted source for your healthcare data, and make sure we can get it back and forth. And like our business models, the B2B, B2B2C, and D2C, I think there'll be probably not just 3. There might be 5 ways that people want to get their data. Some will be all private, just on my app for me. Some will be, I'm okay being part of this sort of, anyone who's done 23andMe, you're part of their clinical trial because you allowed your de-identified data to be part of it. So there'll be some who'll be like that, and there'll be some who'll be even, more liberal with their data out there. And I think that all that layers of privacy and cybersecurity and interoperability are going to be, they're going to be barriers to entry and sustainable competitive advantage for those of us who do it right on the healthcare industry. And so it's not that we don't see the tech and the capability. It's like we've got to jump into that water at the right time and at the right rate, and just a little bit ahead of our customers. And our customers, capital C, is the patient, the physician, the provider, and the payer, and the government communities.
And we got a question about, structural threats, and, Nokia went out of business, Kodak went out of business, obviously very equipment focused. What are you doing to stay ahead of that? And sounds like you are pivoting from, driven by the hardware to solutions, software, tech, and everything else that goes with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we looked at Nokia versus Apple. I mean, obviously we want to be the Apple. We are the Apple. Actually, Professor Rafael Palayo from Stanford, head of sleep medicine at Stanford, he calls ResMed the Apple of sleep apnea. And I love it because there's a lot of tech people that he sees up there, and they're like, I got a call from Johnny Ives wanting to give me feedback on the design of our next product. I'm like, that's pretty cool. If literally the guy who designed, the Englishman who designed the iPhone wants to give me feedback on a med tech device, that means that merge between consumer tech and med tech. Like if Johnny Ives wants to call Mick Farrell, that's happened. it's tough to get on his
He
calendar.
just got off the phone with Bono, so it's like
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a groupie for Bono for sure, but I'm a groupie for Johnny Ive because design is really, I love good design. I think we need to get there in our space. But yeah, we don't have all the answers on that. But we're working with the tech companies to try and find what that might look like.
cool. All right, we're right on time. So final question. Are you having fun?
I love that question. It's the question I ask all my direct reports. First start of what used to be called a performance review now is my, just an annual check-in conversation. We were having them all the time. Yes, I am fired up about this industry. We just reorged the whole company. A new chief product officer, new chief revenue officer, a new chief marketing officer just a couple of months ago. It's the next generation of leaders. I mean, I've been with a COO who's a partner with mine the last 10 years. He just retired, and a top lawyer just retired. I brought the next generation up. I'm 51, probably got, or 52 next month. I've probably got 8-9 years to run through the tape here. I need the next generation of leaders there, and I put them in. I am fired up to create the legacy. My dad started this thing from nothing. He bought this for $800,000 from Baxter in 1989. Market cap's 26 billion today. It's pretty good. Something to nothing is amazing. But I want to take, if he was the Steve Jobs on that analogy, I want to be the Tim Cook to turn this hardware company into a strong software-driven hardware company. And we've done that. And now a market-leading, AI-driven, software-driven medtech company. And so I'm excited about our 2030 strategy, and I can't wait to get out there and launch that over the coming months. And I'm powered up, Ed. Thanks for having me on your HBS team here, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
This has been awesome. I think the Steve Jobs, Tim Cook thing is a pretty good analogy because, Steve Jobs obviously gets a tremendous amount of credit, but you look at the value that's been created under Tim Cook, it's vastly, vastly greater, right? So obviously I've looked at your share price over the last, 15, 20 years, and most of that value is under your leadership. So
well, the difference for us though is we've got Steve Jobs alive, and so at the sales meetings, I can bring the old man in, but a founder and chairman emeritus, but he's not allowed to attend after 9 p.m. with alcohol. He's only allowed in the daytime with coffee because,
Yeah, well, he's a good Australian. So what else?
He is a good 1942 born Aussie.
That's good. Well, Mick, I very much appreciate you taking the time to share with us, and it's a great story. And congrats, and we look forward to seeing continued phenomenal progress. So thank you very much, and everybody on the call. We appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you at the next CEO forum, which is Tom Penn, the founding partner and CEO of San Diego Football Club. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Mick.
Bye.